Hello everyone, this is Ken Quigley from Keystroke, and today's deep dive webinar is going to be on the new Keystroke API, or Cappy for short. I just want to go through a few housekeeping items, just because we don't want to kind of let everyone relax and watch the presentation without having to worry about writing anything down. So this event will be recorded, and you can find that recording from our homepage. Scroll down. And here's the upcoming events where you can find all future events, but here's the Keystroke training videos. And you simply scroll down and click on, here's our Windows training videos, and here's the Keystroke product videos. And you'll find this down here probably by no later than tomorrow, okay? This webinar is expected to go about an hour. We're going to do a fairly deep dive on the product, the integrations, and Awesome, the developer of the Keystroke API, as well as custom tables and many of our other products, is actually going to do a demonstration of the setup and configurations. Okay, now, first thing I want to do is show you, if you go back to our homepage, go click blog, scroll down, you're going to see a blog that we wrote on it, and you can kind of review this after the fact if you've missed any points or have any questions. Like, here's some technical points as to, what's unique about the Cappy, and don't want to have to feel that, you've got to remember any of this. So this you can review here. Okay, and okay, so with that covered, let's get going. So what is the Cappy? Keystroke API, or Cappy for short, is a 64-bit REST API that works with all versions of Act 19.2 and higher. And we had to do that because there were some feature choices we had to make that if we extended support any further back, we would have to drop. But anyway, more importantly, Cappy extends API access to pro and off-plan premium users as well. That's really important because right now, the Act Web API only is available to people that are current subscribers, and no version of pro users have ever had access to the API. So Cappy was built for the express purpose of supporting add-ons with a faster, more stable web API solution while increasing the Act integration support for web services like Joomla and WordPress. Cappy is easy to install and is also free to everyone. Let me repeat this, free to everyone. There's no fee, there's no upgrade options, there's no premium tiers. This is all free all the time. It's not time bombed, it will be forever free. And I hope it will become evident as to why we're doing that through this presentation. Anyway, depending on where it's being used, some additional environmental setup may be required, like static IPs or DIN DNS and some port forwarding, but those are all things most ACCs or IT people are extremely familiar with. The important part is Cappy comes with an easy-to-use installer that Austin's going to demonstrate that handles all the internal configurations for you. And as I said, Austin, our CTO and developer of Cappy, will demonstrate the setup of Cappy on one of our servers in a few minutes. Okay, needless to say, if you're working with a participating hosting provider like Keystroke or RTG or Tech Commandos, they'll handle all the setup for you. Just like with, if you're getting the Act Web API, they will literally provide you the address. Okay, so let's actually see what that looks like. So here's a current list of all of the Act Web APIs provided by us and RTG. And if you scroll down further, here's the current APIs for Cappy, okay, or the Cappy addresses. And as you can see, very simple, very short, and typically they'll have a /Cappy extension, okay? And this is currently available in ours and RTG servers, and we're expecting, I'll get into some of the other ones in a little bit. So that's Cappy. What isn't Cappy? So what Cappy isn't is a replacement for the Act Web API. So let me just go up here. So here's our connections page. So the Act Web API is an exclusive connector for things like AMA, Insights, dynamic dashboards, Outlook or Word integration, specifically the V22 and V23 Outlook and Word integrations, or the mobile app that shall not be named. Okay, Cappy is also not a replacement for Act Connect Link, which is actually not really about the API, but more about providing kind of a tunneling service. Okay, and while Cappy can run alongside the Act Web API on the same server, okay, because Cappy is a 64-bit API, and currently there's only a 32-bit version of the ActWeb API. Cappy cannot work for SaaS databases, since Swiftpage is the only one that hosts the APIs for SaaS, and they will never, I presume never, will support the Cappy, okay? So let's go over to, okay, go back here, click on Shop, and scroll down to a selection of most of our API products. Okay, so what is the objective of Cappy? The first objective is Cappy is for us is to build API support for our add-ons, and to that end, we have updated the following applications to support Cappy. So the first one is Handheld Contact API. So Vic will be doing a demonstration at the end of the different setup processes for Handheld Contact API. Now remember, this will now be available to pro users and off-plan premium users in a way it was never previously available. So previously, only classic handheld contact was a mobile option for the for pro and off-plan premium customers. Well, now once they set up Cappy, the API solution can work for them as well. The other product that Austin retrofitted this week was Act for Mail, okay, as well as all of the Linktivity products, specifically Link to Calendar, Link to Events, Link to Forms, and Link to Lists. And I'm going to be doing a little bit of a demonstration on the slightly different setup procedures for Cappy at the end of Austin's presentation. Okay, now one of the things that isn't really known around the community was our very first Cappy deployment, because it's one thing to say Cappy this, Cappy that, but what is it like? What is a real use case where we've deployed it internally for our own business purposes? And what that was, the very first iteration was the Keystroke Account Manager. Okay, and the Keystroke Account Manager provided our customers direct access to their account and licensing information from the internet. Okay, they logged in with their email and their, I'm getting some static here. Okay, they logged in with their email, their account number, and their password, and they were able to get direct information on their account that was being read directly from our database. So let's just see a quick example of that. So here is the login. Now this is available in our mobile apps as well for iOS and Android, but for simple Windows users, you can go to KAM for Keystroke Account Manager.kqc.ca. Here's our account, here's my email, here's my password, and I can click on Go. Now, what this is logging in. It's checking against our database using Cappy, and now we can just click on here, and it's going to read all the subscription information, licensing information that's in our ACT database, support contracts, and many other features. Okay. Now we've built in some other functionality in this, but those first three are all reading directly from our database that we were able to connect using Cappy. So there's a real life example. So if you were thinking of building a membership tool where you kept all your members in the ACT database and you wanted to provide an internet front end for them to log in, renew, because our customers can even renew their subscriptions or renew their support contracts, all of those would be available as a Cappy connected service. Okay, so that's the use case. Now, phase two, I've already discussed a little bit, and that is to make sure that Cappy is available to as many people as possible, and that's through the hosting providers like RTG, as I showed you, is already deployed it for their V22 and V23 servers. Tech Commandos will be deploying it in the near future as well. They're committed to it, and I've already talked to John Klubnik. He's excited about it, and the documentation for setting it up will be distributed to all of the ACCs next week. We've already written it up so that you guys will know how to deploy it on your own customer servers. And again, this is something that Austin is going to run through a demo of. The third objective is the inevitable one, and that is to work with the development community. And in the coming weeks and months, we'll be hosting many training webinars for the act development community, distributing supporting documentation to them as well, so they can comfortably build solutions that they know that they can rely on, solutions that have better filtering. And Austin's going to explain some of this 64-bit API, so much better management, fewer crashes based on the 32-bit architecture. So all of this, and obviously this is going to support, ACT in the fall when they come out with a 64-bit architecture, because we're already there. Okay. The fourth objective is to build a plugin for popular website content management systems like WordPress and Joomla, so people can really integrate easily the different data exchange functions into their website. I showed you an example here, and then we can expand to include things like e-commerce solutions, Shopify, Hickashop, WooCommerce. Like for instance, every single person that checks out a product on our website, automatically it's checked against our database, and if they're not there, they're added to our database. No data entry at all, and it's all done through a Cappy connection. Okay, and the last thing is, before I hand it over to Austin, we're expecting some people to ask, so I just want to say that building a Zapier plugin for Cappy is on the roadmap, but honestly is not a priority right now, because Zapier integrations with ACT is really not strong enough for us to prioritize, and I'm not sure, honestly, with Cappy we would be adding much to what we found is already a weak offering. So it's on the roadmap. We're going to explore different ways of attacking it, but our current priority for May is to build things like plugins for people to easily integrate it with WordPress and Joomla and some of the e-commerce solutions that I mentioned. So with that, concludes my portion of the presentation. So I'm going to make Austin the presenter. You ready, Austin?
Hi, Sam.
Okay.
Let me know if you guys can see my screen.
We can.
Yep. Okay, so I just remoted into one of our hosting servers to kind of show you how to set up Cappy. So the first step is to just download it. So it should be on our FTP, and that is, if you go to actforwork.com, you'll see all of our products there. You want to scroll down to the Cappy folder here and double click to download it. Should be pretty small download, and setting it up is, again, pretty straightforward. You just run it, just hit run, and you will hit next and install, and that should do it if you're on Act for Web server setting. But I understand that some of you may not have that. If you have Act Pro, or if you're just running Windows 10, you will need to install IIS. So before you do any of this, you want to make sure IIS is installed. You will get an error message if you attempt to install it with that not available. So I'll show you both the server and the Windows 10 environments, how to do that quickly. So if you're on a Windows server like this, just open up your server manager from the Start menu. Okay. And on the top, click Manage and Add Roles and Features. Okay, hit Next on the first page here. You want to do role-based. And also, there should be only one server listed on this page, but if there's multiple, just select the one you're logged into right now. Hit Next.
And just for clarity, Austin, this is for people that don't have IIS installed, right? Like this is not something that would be required if it's already there. So it's not part of the Cappy setup, more the environmental setup.
Yep. Yeah. So like I said, yeah, if you have Act for Web already installed on your server, it already installs IIS and everything. So this part you don't need to worry about if you have. But if you have Act Pro or if you're running Windows 10, then you will need to do this. Okay. So and hit Next. So on the Select Server Roles page, scroll down all the way. You'll see IIS, Web Server. So you just check that, hit Add Features, hit Next. And you want to make sure that the ASP.NET 4.5 is checked right now because it comes installed with Windows. It's already checked, but for yours, it might not be checked by default. But you want to make sure you do that, and hit next again. So this is just the web server. Also here, you will need to enable a couple of things. If you want to scroll down, can you put the delay here on my side? Give me one moment.
Vic, do we have any questions at this time?
No questions yet. So if you do have questions, please put them in the chat. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, so you want to scroll down a bit here. And sorry, I'm getting a lot of, I don't know if it's my internet or but it's really delayed. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So you want to go over to the application development section. You want to expand that, and you want to enable the ASP.NET related options here. So you want to select, let's say 4.5, hit add features, and also the 3.5 and just the regular ASP. So you want to make sure that these three are checked. These are not checked by default, so this is important. The rest, I believe you can leave as is, or you can enable more options if you need, but this should be good as like a bare minimum setup. So hit next and just hit install, and that will install IIS for you. Just let that finish. And while that is, sorry, go ahead.
Austin, one question.
Yep.
So there's a question. So Cappy will be for server environment only, correct?
No, it's for desktop only, and that's what I was going to go into next. Is okay. While this is installing, is I'll show it on my desktop. If I minimize it, this is Windows 10, so it does not have IIS installed by default. So to do that, you open up your programs and features section here in your control panel, and on the left-hand side, you'll see a turn Windows features on or off option. Okay, if you click that, there you will see Internet Information Services, which is IIS. So you want to do the same thing that we did with the server one, just expand it and make sure the application services is enabled. So here we go. You can see I've already, actually I don't have 3.5 enabled, but we'll just do that as well. So you want to make sure that these are at least enabled. So once you do that, just hit OK, and Windows will do the installation pretty quickly. And then you can kind of continue on with the Cappy installation. So
while that's going in, I do want to stress that it has to be Windows 10 Professional. So if you try to do this with a home edition of Windows 10, that doesn't support IIS. So just be mindful of that when you're selecting the workstation to set it up on.
Yep. So we need Windows 10 Pro or any kind of server operating system. Okay. So it looks like it's finished here. So I'll hit close, and I can minimize that and continue with the install. So here, if I just hit install, it will take care of everything. You can see it says creating application pool and so on. So it should be pretty quick. And now if I launch IIS, similar to ACT, under the default website, it will create its own application. So in this case, it's called Cappy. And this can run alongside of ACT, any other ACT-related services, so APFW or ACT Web API and so on. Okay, and to see if it's working, on the right-hand side, if you come over here, hit Browse, and that should take you over to the web page. Okay, first time might be a little bit slow. There we go. So it's working. And now that it's working, you want to make sure that you can also access this page from outside the from this machine. So there's a couple of things we'll cover, but we're not going to cover things like port forwarding and things like that. That's something that your IT admin or if your ACC is willing to do that for you, they can do that. But for this demo, we'll just cover opening up the port on the Windows firewall. So to do that, just open up the start menu again, search for firewall, and open the Windows firewall with the security. Okay, on the left-hand side, click on inbound rules. And just you want to add new rule, so click new rule on the right. So you click the port radio button and hit next. So for now, I'll just open up port 80, but if you want to set up a SSL certificate, which is highly recommended for security, you also want to open up the port 443 as well. And you can do that by just doing comma and then 443. So this way you can open 2 ports in one rule. And just hit next. And you want to allow the connection, which should be default. Hit next. And you can leave all these checked. Next, and then give it a name like allow Cappy or something like that, and hit finish, and that should open up the port. And now you can access this from the Cappy from outside the this machine. So if I open up my browser here on my local machine, I have the server has a host name s28.acthosting.net/Cappy. And you can see we can reach that. And again, the other thing is the host name. So you're not, if you're just doing it on like a Windows 10 workstation, chances are you don't have a host name. So again, you will need to look at something like a dynamic DNS service that will give you a host name as well. And again, that kind of makes it worthwhile to actually host your database with us instead of this, because instead of paying some IT person to do all this, you can pay much less just host the database with us, and we'll kind of take care of all these steps for you. But you do have the option if you want to go that route. So this is going to be your URL. So you want to copy it and paste it into one of the products here. So I have Outlook right now, and as Ken mentioned, we already converted Act4Mail. So I'll click Act4Mail settings. And you can see the web API URL I've posted here. We've added 2 radio buttons at the top. So we now can support Cappy and ActWeb API. So you want to make sure you're on Cappy, enter your URL. Everything else you'll leave the same. And if you just hit login, you'll see that it's able to log in. And you should be good to go. And I think that's pretty much it for the demo. Are there any questions so far? Ken, Vic?
I don't see any questions other than what we've already answered. Okay, so give one more moment. Okay, so then do you want to set, let me just make myself the presenter then. Okay, make presenter. Okay, go back to here. Okay, so Austin just showed you how to make the change for Act4Mail, and that's what you're going to see in what I'm about to demonstrate, as well as what Vic is going to demonstrate, is how we've retrofitted some of our applications to support it. So everyone is presumably familiar with our Linktivity products. So going to linktivity.net. Okay. Obviously, it had my information cached. So here's all the different program options, and here is quite plainly the API settings. So as you can see, much like in Act4Mail, there's radio buttons options at the top. So you currently it's selected for the ActWeb API. If I selected this and put in the address, then that it would work against that connection. You would have to click save, and then you'd have to test the connection. Now, if you currently are using any of these API programs like Link to Calendar, okay, Link to Calendar will adjust automatically to the new API or Cappy connections. However, if you have Link to Events, like all of you guys that are in attendance here, signed up using the Link to Events invitation page, okay? Link to Forms, and Austin, I don't think it affects Link to List, does it?
It does affect Link to List, yes.
Okay, so a Link to List, any of these features, Link to Events, Link to Forms, Link to Lists, if you switch over to Cappy, you will have to recreate any of the events or forms or lists. So what I recommend, especially with events, is wait until you've kind of gone through your monthly scheduled events, switch over to the to Cappy, okay, and then create your new ones using those connections, because those configurations won't work anymore, because basically those forms are, you know, internet-facing links back to your database. Well, those links were previously reliant on the Act Web API, and those links, once you switched your connection method, will now be dead. Okay, and we can't, you know, change those connections, so they have to be recreated. The one conspicuous exception is Link to Calendar, which, you know, will adjust automatically. Okay, any questions on that? Okay, this is easy. Oh. Okay, very good. Okay, so the next is, if there is no additional questions on that, let's switch it over to Vic. Vic, you're muted right now, but I'm going to make you the presenter. Normally I'm in favor of muting Vic, but in this case, you know, we got to do it for the audience.
Well, I won't even say anything, or I could mute you, I guess. That would probably be easier. So welcome, everybody. So what I'll do today is just show you a quick setup with just a few minutes of the demo. And so we have our HHC API right there. And so this is a dev build. It's not released yet. The builds for the Android will be released on Sunday, so it'll be active on Monday. And we're just working out the final details of the release for the iPhone.
But the iPhone is just in the final stages of beta testing. There's not a whole lot more to do.
Yeah, no, so that'll probably go live beginning of next week as well. So first of all, you just type in your URL.
This is where we all get to witness Vic's typing speed.
Well, and my typing
accuracy.
Speed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's more like it.
Yeah.
So
you're
that's
you're using your fingers, right?
Just ignore Ken. I usually do. It works quite well for me.
Mm. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Okay, we're almost there.
No performance issues.
Okay, so here at the bottom screen, so here's the big difference during the setup. I mean, it's not a big difference. So if you want Cappy on, you have the, if I click there, I'm not using Cappy. And again, we're just going to change the wording on that later on today or tomorrow. But if you want to use a Cappy, you do that. Now, as Ken said, there's a bunch of advantages to using the Cappy for HHC. One, Mac Pro users. Number two, there are some changes in the ability for the calendar display, or improvements with Cappy, as well as there's some download exception dates for recurring activities that work better with Cappy. So we do recommend using it. So HHC username, I'll just type that in. And I log in. So again, the setup is identical. I have a group here called All Contacts. Again, with the API, those of you that haven't used it, for the API, you do have to choose one group and only one group. And custom fields are not showing up because this is a demo database. And you also download opportunities. You can go through again and choose all the fields that you want to synchronize. Click next, and then we're ready. That's how fast it is. So typical download. As you saw that download, I mean, I'm only doing 214 contacts here. I didn't want to sync to production. I always sync production, though. I do about 31,000 contacts with about 400 activities and about 300 opportunities. And those take literally between 5 and 10 minutes to load. It's that fast. And as you know, there's no sync in between with the middleware, and so everything is direct to the ACT database. It's instant going through. So I just click next, and then I'm ready to roll going through here. So that's it for the demo. Again, the setup is very simple. Make sure that when you do try it, that you make sure that you check off the Cappy. And again, to check, if clients say, oh, I'm not sure if I'm using it, you just go to, on the right-hand side on the bottom here, in the menu, you just click on the settings. And then if you go to Act Account Info, you can tell if the Cappy is activated or not.
Excellent. Thanks, Vic. Just please keep your screen up. I just want to kind of do a recap. So obviously based on what we've built here for the handheld contact, we will be contacting a lot of our hosting customers that are currently using Classic, because we've actually provided Classic hosting services in the past, and hosting providers like RTG, like Keystroke, and like Tech Commandos, and John Klubnik most certainly have been, extremely generous with their time and the resources supporting this. But because Classic is no longer required for all of those hosting customers, Vic, can you make sure that we've got everyone muted here?
Yeah, I would double check that quickly. We do have a question, Ken, too, in case you.
Okay. Okay, going to get to that, Tamara. So just 1 second. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to be slowly replacing and nudging a lot of the people that we're hosting and some of the other hosting providers are hosting, and provide this Cappy solution so that those users can have access to the API solution. Now, why is that important? Well, if you have a hosted database and we are hosting your handheld contact Classic, then no matter what, you are in a long queue of all other users that are being hosted. Okay. I'm just going to ask anyone that's participating to have themselves muted. Okay, so what Cappy does is it provides you a direct connection to your data. So you're not in queue with anyone. You don't have to wait for anyone else to complete a sync. So you can get much more updates of a lot more data more frequently. Okay, so this is a much better hosted solution, and it's a lot easier on the resources. So this is where we're going to be heading. Now, there's a couple of things that I really want to kind of summarize and explain, why we're doing this. So, the big advantage of Cappy is support for the 64-bit application pools. Okay, so you're not going to have the 2 gig memory limit of the 32-bit application pools that we frequently run into. Okay, so it can handle much larger queries. The other thing is it supports much faster filtering, which is performed at the SQL server level. Parameters are saved in headers, and I apologize, some of this stuff is a little technical, are saved in headers instead of query strings. This means that you can have a large amount of parameters and not run into the IIS limits, which require editing of the web config file. Okay, there are easier ways to manage and maintain. Each parameters is kept in its separate header instead of one long URL. Okay, that was a bit technical. The other thing is, and this is really relevant to us as for handheld contact, is Cappy has certain endpoints that are not available in the ActWeb API. And this has been a real struggle for us, such as getting activity cleared information or deleted dates. Frequently when we're pulling down information and someone clears an activity or deletes an activity in Act, handheld contact can't reconcile that. So what we had to do is build these workarounds where every 24 hours, all activities are downloaded. Cappy works around that and has much better detections for those endpoints. Performance is also much better than the ActWeb API in general, due to Cappy not returning data that is not needed with each query, such as not returning data if a property value is not the default value for that type. This cuts down on latency and bandwidth depending on the size of the synchronization of data. And I'll give you an example. We had one customer that used to store huge image files on their database in picture fields. Okay, and she basically could not get AMA to work because there was no field filtering to work around those or exclude those fields. So what would happen is AMA would constantly crash and not be able to retrieve group data because those image files were so big, and AMA would, or the API would just crash trying to account for those massive files. Okay, so we've got the ability with Cappy to filter out what we don't need. And to that point, performance improvement, because you could select which fields you want to get the value on. And as I said at the beginning, one of the biggest advantages is Cappy provides support for Pro and off-plan premium customers with version 19.2 or higher. So really, for all of the API functionalities and for developers out there and resellers out there that really want to offer things like link to calendar to all of their customers on active subscriptions or not, Cappy really provides that bridge to, a huge legacy audience. So we're hoping that that really extends what we can do and offer to all of our ACT customers, past and present. Okay, and why is it free? The reason it's free is because we want this to be the standard. We want people to develop against it. We don't want to keep layering on costs. We're not increasing the cost of any of our add-ons that have multiple connection supports. So, we want to make sure that, people have access to this technology so that they can provide these services. Now, think about all the ACCs on the call. Think about the amount of additional consulting that they can provide, setting up their customers with Cappy for those that don't want to be in a hosted environment. This presents all kinds of different, consulting opportunities and providing really offering yourself as a gateway to all the different other API services that suddenly they're accessible to. And if you're on the development side, you can start building against plugins so you can integrate, like I showed you with CAM, integrate services into the customer's website that exchange data directly with their ACT database. All of these things lead to more stickiness, lead to people, getting more out of their ACT data. And we don't have to sit back and, listen to other people say, well, this can't be done with ACT, that can't be done with ACT. Well, guess what? With Cappy, free, it can be done with ACT. Okay, and we can hold our head a little bit higher and offer deeper, more meaningful services to all of our customers. Now let's quickly go through the.
Ken, there's one question here that came just to me. Will HHC KPI work without internet access?
You need internet access because the Cappy, well, things like, actually, let me clarify. So things like handheld contact is an on-premise solution. So in that case, you've got the data on your device, but you still need Cappy, okay, or an internet connection to connect to your database that is connected to Cappy. So, this isn't magic. You still need connectivity of some type. This provides, the connectivity connected. Sorry, let me rephrase that. That's badly put. Cappy will provide the connection to the database. It won't provide the internet to the database.
Correct, but so the question I think was asking is, if I don't have access, can I still have access to all my information? And the answer is yes.
Yeah, if there's data exchanged, absolutely. A lot of the solutions that we've built, for instance, like I showed you the Keystroke Account Manager, that information gets cached and that's available instantly. And just like with the with handheld contact, that gets downloaded. It's on your device. So it's kind of a qualified yes, because it really is going to depend on the application that you're using and how the developer has set it up. So a lot of our tools will download the data like handheld contact, but if you're looking for obviously a connection for updated information, internet would of course be required.
Excellent. Okay. Should I read the questions here?
I see Karen has asked if there's written documentation for the process. Yes, Karen will be distributing that next week to all ACCs, providing a link to it. We're probably going to add it to the same folder that the download is in, so people have like kind of one place to go. And we'll provide developer documentation as well. Okay, and we're going to be hosting webinars so that people, can get more comfortable with it more quickly, and also, access Austin as a resource. Because, truthfully, guys, before we brought this to you, we went through the painful process of retrofitting all of our own applications. Think about it. Handheld contact touches just about every single table in the database. So just about every single endpoint. So we knew by the time we were done retrofitting it, we had to put ourselves as the canary in the cave and say, if we can hit every single endpoint and make this work, then we know that we can answer most developers' questions. And that's what we did. And I'm not going to pretend that it was, you know, an instant process. It was a great learning experience for us and took a little bit longer, but we actually feel a lot more confident bringing this to the market after what we learned. Okay. So what kind of performance increase do you expect? Well, I mean, the performance increase, obviously the speed performance will always be throttled by your connection link, okay? But what we've seen is, you know, if you're running against a 32-bit API versus a 64-bit API, and you're chunking a lot more information, then that's going to pass through much more efficiently because the system can use whatever memory it requires. Okay, as opposed to being limited to a 2 gig limit. Okay, if there's a small amount of data being transmitted, you're probably not going to see a whole lot of difference because there isn't any thresholds that you're hitting.
Ken, can I kind of elaborate on that question a bit? Because if you remember before your webinar a couple of weeks ago, I did do a little benchmark. So I basically ran a query on the entire database, which was about, I don't know, 250,000 contacts and 1 or 2 fields, I believe. And this is testing with the 64-bit API, by the way, of ACT.
Oh, good.
So it shouldn't have any, so it's pretty much identical, both 64-bit and both pretty much the same query. Cappy returned everything in, I think, 3-ish minutes. And the ACT API, I think, crashed after 20 minutes and returned nothing.
So yeah, then the difference becomes a bit binary, right? One works, one doesn't.
Yep.
Yeah, sorry, Austin, I remember you actually showed me a few of those benchmarks. Those were excellent examples. But, you know, to someone's point, if you're dealing with a small amount of data, you might not see, you know, a measurable difference. But the more data that you're bringing through, then yeah, that one case, I actually was watching those benchmarks, and it was pretty incredible to see the difference, you know, where one was in 3 minutes and the other one just crashed after 20. Okay, so let's see here. Just to be,
Steve has a question. This will not work for the
poor devils hosted by ACT. So, you know, condolences are obviously implied. It will not work because they will not support any API other than their own. So that, you know, that's what I kind of said at the outset, and that's why it's not going to be available as a SaaS. Now, in a perfect world, which I don't believe any of us think we're living, but in a perfect world, Swiftpage will at one point realize that they haven't really developed an optimal API for add-ons, and they will consider incorporating this into their environment. But I'm not holding my breath, but it's possible. Anything's possible. Okay, let's see. So Tom Perkinson asks if we will be sunsetting HHC Classic. Absolutely not. And the reason is that there's a lot of pro users that even don't have Cappy accessible to them. If you imagine that there's a ton of pro users out there, 1 or 2 users that are on home-based operating systems or have slower, unreliable internet, like we take pride in the ease of setup with Classic and how it kind of circumvents all of the, you know, the port forwarding and things like that. And we will continue to offer that as a solution. But one thing, and certainly Tom working for RTG should appreciate, is that we are not going to be imposing Classic as an overhead expectation on hosting providers, because now there is a much better solution that they're capable of setting up and supporting more easily. And it really, it requires no intervention beyond the initial setup of the hosting provider. So everything will be in the hands of the customers, which is what I think everyone wants. Okay, so Brian Pearson has asked us to be clear on internal intranet use. This client is on a secure VPN, and their Apple devices are behind firewalls, and Act4Webs never goes out to the DMC. I'm going to ask you, Brian, because you're kind of freaking me out here with all these kinds of different, you know, specific cases. You'll probably need to email Austin, and he'll provide you, you know, at least a more accurate, because after about the 3rd qualification, I kind of lost track. Okay, Dwayne Morrison Smith asked me if Swiftpage has endorsed this. You know what? We're not keeping anything from anyone. We're publishing it on our website, and I want to be really clear. But I'm also not going to conceal my contempt for, what we've had to go through working on developing against the API. Last week, the API was broken yet again, and we were getting reports from customers that couldn't download more than 200 contacts at a time. We can blame the API all we like, but ultimately this comes back and costs us business. And so we had to take the quality control into our own hands, and that's what we've done. So Dwayne, I'm not sure, but I don't care. Okay. Now, Brian then asks, will this work for HHC Mac? And the answer is yes. Okay, so the first iteration will be strictly API, and then the second iteration will support Cappy. Okay, just that we've got some backlog items to kind of make sure that we can release HHC Mac next week. But then right after that, the next backlog item will be supporting Cappy. And I'll be honest with you, we've already done all the heavy lifting, so our developer knows what to do for this version. Okay. Austin, I'm going to let you answer this one. Is Cappy base 64 encoded for the credentials?
No, it's not, because it's not really needed. It's not passing the credentials in in the URL or anything like that. So that's kind of what, if you're worried about security, then that's why I mentioned make sure you host with SSL, because in that case everything's encrypted. But yeah, base 64 is not really secure anyway. You can easily reverse it. So I didn't really see the need to base 64 encode the credentials.
Okay, thank you, Austin. Any other questions?
That's all I see. Anybody else?
Tamara has asked, how do I find my Cappy URL on my Windows 10? Okay, so Tamara, obviously it's going to be specific to you. If you don't have a static IP address, okay, or a DIN DNS, kind of pointing to the outside of your router, then you're going to need that, because obviously, everyone who has an internet address, it's a dynamic IP address, and you can't reliably host against a dynamic IP address. But a DIN DNS or a static IP address would support that, and then likely it would be / whatever that address is / Cappy. Now then you can obviously with DNS changes resolve that to a friendly host name. Okay, but that's kind of getting beyond the scope of this.
There is one more question there, Ken.
Okay. Okay, there will not be a way that users of Cappy can be blocked by Swiftpage. No. Because remember, we're not using Cappy to do things like AMA. We're not using Cappy to run insights. We're not using Cappy to do any internal ACT functions. What we're using it for is to connect to the data. Okay, and if you're connecting to the data for add-on purposes, it's not in their interest to block that. I mean, let's be honest, guys. This isn't, I mean, we can all joke tongue in cheek and say whether or not they will or won't like this. This keeps ACT customers around. Okay, maybe Swiftpage cedes some of their API exclusivity, but that's what happens in a competitive environment. Okay, and quite frankly, if their API was more stable and was 64-bit from the outset, this wouldn't be required. But we ran into a lot of struggles. Like when we first launched Link to Calendar, previously known as Book to Act, it was broken almost every single month by API updates. You can't run a development business having those kinds of injurious dependencies on a third-party publisher. So, we had to really take the quality control into our hands. Austin, who is our CTO, did a fantastic job. Our other developers like Katerina and Bavin and even Dwayne all have learned to kind of build against Cappy, and I can tell you all of their experiences have been far more positive. So we feel comfortable with the direction we're going with this. And I think that is...
Yeah, that's it for the questions.
Okay, so I want to thank everyone. I know that this, if you're an end user, this probably got a little bit deep in the weeds, more than you were expecting, but this was mostly distributed out to the ACCs. I hope that everyone sees this as a really valuable opportunity to kind of extend your services and extend what you can now offer ACT customers, and hopefully we can use these kinds of things to really keep our customers around and add value to the ACT ecosystem. Okay, so with that, I'll let everyone get back to their day. Thank you very much for your time. It was a great turnout. And if you have any questions, please feel free to email Vic or myself, and we'll get back to you directly. Thank you again, and have a great day.